right. Happy Friday, everybody. Sorry, this was originally scheduled to occur yesterday, but I had some work done in our with our solar panels and electricity and stuff. So we didn't have electricity nor internet for a while, so I had to make changes on my phone. But thanks for joining me, even though no one's here right now. Thanks for joining me. I want to go over just how the a student's journey essentially, right? Because I think that in a weird way, what we're trying to do is so odd that I've had to spend in like an inordinate amount of time just explaining the process to parents, which I'm more than happy to do. But there's like sometimes people are confused. There's some sort of people are like, what's going on? And things of that sort. So just kind of streamline, and it's also just good for people who are not familiar with all of this, just to kind of see just how the journey of a student through our program happens, right? Because I get all sorts of comments on social media like, "Oh, are you only working with like the 1,400 students, or are you only working with students who are super driven, or what have you?" And just kind of the main fundamental, the main principle that follows me for the way that I created the guarantee was because when I was tutoring one-on-one, like when I was, especially like when I was tutoring in New York and in Boston, I what I found myself was I would work with students, and they would sign up for like a 30-hour package, and then at the end of the 30 hours, if they're close, right, if they're just pretty close to their target score and they're putting in all the work, I always kind of gave them extra hours, right? Which was maddening to my wife. But like from my perspective, I was like, I'm so close to getting them their score. I hate for them to, like it's really not worth paying X number of money. At that point, and like just I felt kind of obligated as a teacher to not leave them hanging, right? Especially when parents are like, oh, this is it, we're not going to pay more. And yeah, by the way, I did get taken advantage of a couple of times, but the good outweigh the bad, right? But then so our guarantee is predicated on, if you're working hard, then we're going to keep working with you, and that's where the guarantee comes from. But at the end of the day, as we're implementing this course and working with students from all over, and all different types, I started to realize, the one thing that separated it all was that I can't keep giving them the same course, right? So like if a student joins our program, they go through the whole program and their score hasn't improved. When I talk to my mentors and other people in this space, they were just like, yeah, just have them repeat the course. But from my perspective, I was like, well, at some point, there's not enough return on doing the same course. And so my goal was, in order to truly kind of help the students and get them to where they wanted to be, we had to kind of parse out and tier the course. So this is all part of the entire program, and that's why, on a lot of my Instagram and social media posts, you'll hear me say that it takes as long as it takes, right? Because that's the God's honest truth, right? Like some people get it done in a couple of weeks. Like the student that I'm going to talk to you about today, she got it done in a couple of months, or she's close to getting it done in a couple of months, and she's probably going to be moving over into our Ivy program shortly. But it could take a couple of months. It could take weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. We've had that happen before, and it could take a year, right? And in general, I'd say a year is kind of like, if you're very overly cautious, I'd say plan for it to be a year, right? That does kind of streamline, ramp up a lot easier. And then that can possibly ramp up if the student is doing what they're supposed to do. That time frame can be shortened, but generally, kind of if you're overly cautious, just pick a year, right? The other thing is that once you're hitting the scores on our tests, I highly recommend just taking the next available test, right? Mostly because a lot of students, like a lot of parents and a lot of students, they'll decide, like, I'm a sophomore, I want to take it, by December of my junior year, and then they get their score, in May or June, right? And so they're getting their practice test scores, and then they're like, well, you know what? I'm just going to wait till December anyway, because it kind of makes sense, right? Like taking longer, more time to prepare doesn't hurt. If they're scoring a 1550, maybe the extra couple of months is going to make them go closer to 1590. And what I generally kind of see happening more often than not is, once you're hitting a score, if you wait too long, you're giving people too much time to think, right? So it's kind of like one of those things where, like, you get to a point where you know how to do it and you can do it, and then if you spend too much time doing it, then you're going to start thinking about all the steps and all the process and second guessing yourself, and a lot of kind of weird things happen. So like, I definitely do recommend that. Okay, so I wanted to talk to you about the student. I've just titled her as AH, not her initials, just for some reason, it's just those two letters just typed on my keyboard. But she started her first test. So even though it says test two, this was her technical first test. So she took that in October, and her score was an 1160. So we put her in the foundations course, and during the foundations course. So foundation is where we work with students who are scoring below a 1200, right? So 1200 to 900. Anything lower than 900, we do ask that you do kind of some work on your own, just because but because that is very much on the lower side. So it's like either the student didn't want to really try, or there's just a lot of gaps, or there might even, like it's a case by case situation. But if you're scoring below a 1200, we put you into the foundations program, and the foundations program is designed to just go over the basics, right? And so we'll go over like how to deal with fractions, negative numbers, orders of operations, distribution properties, and things of that sort. And we go over those things, and then we give you SAT style questions to do for homework. Okay. In addition to that, we teach you how to read, right? And I think this is kind of a big thing. I had two conversations with parents today about the reading, because like one student, like the thing about the reading part is, yeah, everyone knows how to read, right? Like my son's been reading since he was 3. Everybody's been reading, since they're like 3 or 4 years old, right? But the problem is, and I've said this a couple of times before, most students, they read with their eyes and not with their brain, right? So then we teach them how to read in groups or in chunks of words. So like you read a chunk, then you write down what they're saying in your own, or try to say it in your own words, and then you read the next chunk and the next chunk and the next chunk, and you keep doing that until you're able to connect those chunks together to one coherent sentence, right? So like that's one of the things, reading to help them identify what the main idea is, what the author's argument is, and if it's the argument, what are the premise that the author uses to support that argument, things of that sort. And then we also go over grammar, right? And this is just basic, like what's a subject, what's a verb, what's a noun, what's an adverb, adjective, all these things that I think, and what we've seen in our foundation classes is that a lot of students, they know all this stuff. So like, it's not anything new, but they didn't learn it as well as they should. They just kind of like, okay, cool. So when I see this, I see that, I do that. And things of that sort. So then this is an opportunity for a lot of our foundation students to just ask questions, right? Like, why do you flip the sign, or why do you do this? And stuff like that, and that allows them to kind of get a deeper understanding of it all. So she was in the foundations course. We made her do go through that program, and then after a couple of weeks, see, this is test, no, that's test 3. Then after a couple of weeks, she actually jumped up to a 1270. Okay, so before we go into that, for the foundations course, if you look at like, and the biggest kind of thing that we want to focus on when it comes to the foundation course is just this idea of like getting all the easy and the medium questions right. Okay, so a student who's in the foundation course is in the foundation course because they're getting a few easy questions wrong and a lot of the medium questions wrong, and of course, just the hard questions, right? So if you look at the circle graph here, right, 1 incorrect for the easy, 11 for the medium, and then 2 skipped, and then for the hard, 18 incorrect, right? So she got more hard questions wrong than she got them right. Okay, so that's kind of like our gauge of trying to figure out, like, does this student belong in the foundations course or not? Okay. So then after doing that for a couple of weeks, she scored a 1270. Okay. So then now she jumped from getting everything right on the easy question to getting 5 questions wrong, only 5 questions wrong on the medium. And her hard is still pretty kind of up there. But if you can see now, she's got more hard questions right and fewer wrong, right? And she, for the easy and the medium, she's not skipping anything anymore, which is good. And then for the hard question, the hard question, she's not, it's the hard questions, right? We still haven't gotten there yet. Okay. And then so then she jumped over to the 1200, and then she's still in the strategy program. So that's the second tier, right? So the strategy course, we figure out, we really do drill down on getting the easy and the medium done almost completely, right? Because we want to work on accuracy and making sure that she has a strategy to answer every single question that comes her way. Okay, so then we're trying to work on that. So this is her last test in the strategy course. So you can see the dates, right? So October 18th. The first one was the 4th. This one's the 18th, and then this one is now November 5th. So this was this week. All right, so she jumped up to a 1380. Her reading score went up to 760. Her math score went up to 620. And if you look at the chart, right, everything right on the easy. Still getting 3 questions wrong on the medium. Let's see how much. I can't remember how much she did. Yeah, she got 5 questions wrong on the medium. So now she's getting 3 questions wrong on the medium. So we're shrinking the medium questions down. And this is actually a pretty good pace for her. at this point. And then she, of course, got fewer questions wrong on the hard questions. Okay. And she only skipped one at this point. Okay. And so like now she's kind of primed to go into the Ivy program. Foundations is where we go over all the basic stuff, all the foundational stuff that they need to know that they might have forgotten, may not have learned correctly. And then we break down those questions types so that she can get all the easies and the mediums, or most of the mediums. Then we put the students in strategy where we come up with a strategy for every question type that she's going to do, and she learns them and practices them and works on becoming more and more accurate. And then once they're able to do that, then we put them into our Ivy program. So this student is at a 1380, so she's at the cusp. I think we're going to put her into the Ivy program. I have to talk to our team about that. But this person is going to go into the Ivy program, and the Ivy program, our Ivy program is actually very successful. So like I said, we came up with this idea because I didn't want to keep putting students through the same program over and over again. And so what I noticed is that once a student hits about a 1400, I generally call it that like the no man's land, right? Because it's almost impossible for just a lot of students to break out of the 1400s. So I got my team together and I just say, hey, so like if we wanted to put together a program where just the high scoring students come in and they are able to do well, what are the types of questions that they're struggling with? Where in the process are they struggling with, right? So what we did was we put together the program that the questions that their students are going to see are generally going to be, some of the questions we made up, but a lot of the questions and a lot of the homework are actually going to be from previously administered exams. And to be very honest, what we did was we took, a lot of our tutors took the tests. We sit down and try to remember as many of the questions as we can, and then we come home and write them down, and the students go over that. So then the Ivy class is now just designed to go over the hardest questions, but also to work on their pacing so that they finish the test in time while maintaining that same level of accuracy that they had during the strategy class. Okay. So foundations for lower than 1200, strategy from 1200 to 1400, and then Ivy for 1400 to 1600. Okay. So that's just kind of the journey that a student normally takes. So, I think some parents have asked, like, do they learn the same thing over and over again? The right answer is no, they don't. Every different levels require different kinds of knowledge and different kinds of understanding. So they do go over different things along the process. Okay, so yeah, I hope this kind of helped. I see that there is a person here, but they're not asking any questions. So feel free to ask some questions. I'll hang out for a little bit, just in case you do. Okay, and if you don't, then I'll talk to you later. Okay, the person left. Okay, well, have a good day, guys. Uh, Hold on. Go upstairs and get the thing. The no itch thing. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.